All right, so tonight we're going to be hello, Angel. Welcome to the chat. All right, nice to see you here. I think we got a few more people, so I guess I'll just wait here until a few people say hello. Got 5 people in. Elliot, nice to see you. Is this where the party is at? You are absolutely right. There is a party going on right here. That is awesome. And you know, the funny thing is it is kind of difficult to get everything working. I don't even know where my chat is, so I'm gonna have to use the chat off of my phone. But we'll definitely get things. Whoop whoop, yeah, Angel, whoop whoop. That's awesome. So tonight we're going to be talking about taking control of your responsibilities. This is kind of a very interesting chat I think we're going to have tonight. Before we begin, make sure that you hit the like button. Make sure that you're subscribed. Also, make sure that you're sharing the channel with other people. That's one of the things that we do in this community is we want to build a community of leadership. Let's share it with as many people as we can. Let's bring this basic knowledge of leadership to as many people as we can. Also, what's really important is that you participate. Let's participate in the conversation. If you're sitting on the sidelines, I'm looking at who's in the chat right now. I got 3 people. I've got people on Discord over here. Again, if there's anybody out there that understands Discord, I really wish that you'd talk to me because it's really confusing. So there we have it. All right. And I think we're ready to roll here. Okay. So it's not as easy as it looks. You know, you think you can just turn everything on and here we go. So all right. So, okay. So a word to the warning. I'm looking right now in the chat. You might not be seeing this because I do have a filter on, but I'm getting it maybe because I'm the host. I'm getting a lot of spam messages in here. So if you're starting to get spam and stuff that's asking you to go to other places and things like that, let me know so that I can start blocking them. But right now I'm getting hit with a bunch of stuff. I guess that's just part of being in YouTube. So we're going to go ahead and start rolling. It's actually 6:50, so I think we waited a long time. Enough time. So we're going to start with taking control of your responsibilities. Very interesting here. So moving forward, what is the definition of responsibility? So if we look up the definitions start out with the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. So that's kind of weird that you would have control over someone. I got to turn this down here. That's kind of interesting. There we go. And then let's go to the next one. It's the state or fact of being accountable. There's that word again, accountable, or to blame for something. And then the other and the third definition, of course, is the opportunity or ability to act independently and make decisions without authorization. So let's take the first one. You know, the state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. It's kind of like, yeah, have control over someone, but actually, you know, having accountability over someone. If that makes sense. I don't like the control over someone because we never really do have complete control over somebody else. But we have a duty to deal with something. And then the state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. You know, these are just regular, I guess, you know, dictionary. So let's go ahead to the next slide. What's your definition? And I think that's really more important. What is our personal definition of responsibility? As a leader, how does being responsible take a role in how we conduct ourselves? So when we look at it, we all make mistakes. We all deal with people. We deal with achievements. We deal with goals. We deal with failures. How do we look at responsibility and being responsible when it comes to those things? Scott, you're right. Control is defined as influence. I get it. Elliot, control isn't a good word. Influence is better. Yeah, I do like that. When I first looked at these definitions, I was kind of a little bit appalled by it, and I was like, really, control over other people? I mean, that's kind of like it's kind of weird, rub the lotion, kind of deal, the Silence of the Lambs. But yeah, unfortunately, that's the way that Webster's defines it. But yeah, I do like that. I do like that. Influence over other people is a really good way to look at it. So when we personally define responsibility, how do we define it when it comes to making mistakes, working with people? How do we define it when it comes to achievements? Goals and failures. There's a whole bunch. This is such a big subject. It's so hard to pin down. So definitions, though, aren't explained from a leadership perspective. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. So yeah, we define the word, but we don't necessarily define the concept, if that makes sense. So let's go to the next one. What are some of the ways we can show that we are responsible leaders? It's interesting. Yeah. And I put on the slide. I mean, why is it important to show that we're responsible? Well, unless you understand what responsibility is, how can you show it? And I would really love some input on this. How do you show that you're a responsible person? And I'm going to open that up. I'm going to open that up for the discussion. Is it just because you take blame? Is it because you just take control? Is it because you think that, the word responsibility means that, all begins and ends with me? I think it's really interesting. And does being responsible mean that we take the blame for everything? Taking the blame for everything, that kind of stinks, doesn't it? If things aren't going our way or the way that we feel that they should be, I really don't think it's necessarily blame that we're dealing with. I think it's accountability. So, like I said, this is a kind of a twisted subject that we have to work with and understand. There's accountability, there's responsibility. Let's see. Responsibility is taking self-ownership for your part. Responsibility is self-reflective. Very good. I think it's time to bring up number one. I really want to build a panel that can join me on Tuesday nights via Zoom and broadcast this live, because I think it would be a lot better to have some verbal content during these. And those that are in the chat right now, I really do encourage you to maybe volunteer just a half hour once a week to join Pathway to Leadership in a live actual discussion via Zoom that people can come in and join us. Because Elliot, you're hitting the nail on the head. Responsibility is taking self ownership for your part. But I guess we have to define what our part is. And there's so many moving pieces. It's kind of difficult to actually explain what our part is. Um, so yeah, why is it important to show that we are responsible? Well, I think as we develop others around us, we have to show through example that we are the ones that are going to move everything forward, and therefore we have to show the people around us that that's part of leadership. Leadership is being the beginning and the end of everything that happens. Okay, Elliot, accountability is being consistent across the board, whether employees or self accountability, i.e., self awareness and self discipline. Oh, discipline. Correct. Yeah, that's really good. Um, so yeah, I guess why is it important to show that we are responsible? Because it shows that we have certain disciplines that need to be learned. You have to learn certain disciplines in order to be a leader. Um, and again, the second question on this board is does being responsible mean that we take the blame for everything? I'm really looking for opinions on that. I mean, yeah, sometimes you want to be everybody's friend, you want to be the fall guy, but is it really about blame or is it really about accountability? And Scott, again, developing others, lifting others up, accountable to the goal. So it's funny. We're starting to see a correlation here that responsibility and accountability seem to be married together. That's kind of cool. So let's go ahead to the next slide. How is taking the blame versus being responsible different? Oh, that's awesome, Elliot. Blameless problem solving. Yeah, I get it. Faithful for leading by example. Yes, yes, that's another video that I have on the series. Leading by example. That's tough. That is very tough. And the reason being is we're all human. And sometimes the example we're showing is not the best one. But I would imagine that if we keep that in the back of our heads, that we are leading by example. So I always revert back to this. Show me your 5 friends, and I will show you your future. That comes from Dan Pena. Last name is Pena. Dan Pena. And I encourage everybody to look that YouTube video up. It talks about surrounding yourself with 5 great supportive people. But there's a little hitch to that. So if you surround yourself with 5 losers, you're going to end up being a loser. If you surround yourself with very good people, chances are you're going to learn from those people and you're going to propel yourself forward. But what's really interesting about that whole ideology is that you're someone else's 5, one of the 5 people. So it takes you out of that element. The people that are close to you, although they might be the 5 people that will develop your future, what if you start thinking of yourself as one of those 5 of the other person? Does that make sense? So you have to conduct yourself in such a way that not only do I have to surround myself with 5 good people, I have to make sure that I'm one of the 5 good people that are surrounding somebody else. There it goes. Chrissy, Thank you for chiming in. I really like leading by example. Exactly. Exactly. That is incredible. So if I were to turn around and tell someone this is the way the bathroom should be cleaned, well, by all means, I should be the first one to clean the bathroom and show what the results are. If I were to say that, this is the way something else should be done, whether it be roofing, whether it be laying block, I should be the one first to show how it's done and that this is the way I physically and actually do it. And therefore, someone already has a sense of, yes, that person does it this way. I saw them do it this way. They're not afraid to do it this way. And that brings a lot of credibility. Okay, chat's blowing up here. Let's see. Blame is very easy. Blame is finger pointing, essentially. Responsibility puts self first, and where you, as a person, can improve or how you may have contributed. That's pretty awesome. And then Scott, I say take ownership of your actions and leadership. Be accountable. When things go wrong, you are responsible to that. But when you demonstrate leadership, responsibility, the blame can fall to someone else. I get it. I get it. Might have to read that one a little bit. Angel! Okay, Angel's back on. We must ask, what can I do to improve? How can I help improve my team? Not in a blame sense. And that's really interesting, Angel, that you brought that up because that's really important. Is it really about fault? Is it really about lacking? Is it really about anything? Or is it really about what is the end result? What am I looking to do? And I find personally, those that like, and Elliot, you said it best, point fingers, point, 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 point. Okay. Those are the ones that are always blaming somebody else. And they're never really truly getting to the end result. What is your end game? Is your end game actually to improve from where we are to go somewhere better? Or is your end game really to just point out everybody else's fault and to make yourself look better? Because I think that's really what leadership is all about. Is I'm not trying to make myself look better. I'm trying to take us from where we are today to a better place that we can all share in where the achievements that we have accomplished. And yeah, Angel, you really tapped in on something there, and I'm glad you brought that up. Elliot agreed at Scott Dennis. You can lead, but people also have to be willing to be led. Well, that's true. That is true. And you find those kind of people in the people that don't operate off of ego all the time. If they're operating straight out of ego every day, they're not willing to be led. What they are doing is fighting leadership. And that's going to be a video for another day. Those that fight leadership. You hear about those guys, I have a problem with leadership and authority. Well, yeah, you're going to have that. You're going to have a lot of problems for the rest of your life. And Scott, I know you were in law enforcement, so you understand that too. When you come across people that they just have a problem with authority, and I think we just hit another a video topic for later in the future is those that refuse to be led. It's unfortunate. It really is. And us as leaders, how do we approach that? How do we approach the person that just isn't a hard time dealing with authority and moving forward? It's kind of like, we're on the outside looking in and we know there's a train wreck coming that's That's pretty tough. All right, let's move on. As leaders, we want to develop the people around us. How do we develop people so they take on more responsibility? So I'm going to let that stew for a minute. So I'm not talking about delegating. I'm not talking about delegating authority or delegating tasks or anything like that. But how do we as leaders kind of influence others? Again, going back to what you said earlier, not control, over control, but how do we influence others so that they want to take on responsibility? Because ultimately, in an organization, that's what we want to do, right? More people that take on responsibility, the better the entire organization becomes. So how do we as leaders, excuse me, instill that into others, that they want to take on more responsibility? That's a tough question, I think. And I put out these other things for the conversation tonight. What key points would you address when delegating more responsibility? And I struggle with this. How do you work with others? And it's kind of like a lightning bolt hit me years ago, myself personally. It was a lightning bolt that said, you're not going to get anywhere unless you start taking on more responsibility. I was kind of hiding in my career. It was get up, go to work, go home, go to bed. And I was in that position in my life where it was like, I wish I would make more money. Why don't they recognize me? Why don't I get more? Why don't I this? Why don't I that? And I was blaming everybody else. But I think lightning finally hit when I said to myself, maybe if I took on a little bit more responsibility, I could actually get somewhere. I'm not saying this is for everybody, but that was a revelation for me, and I started to take on more responsibility. And actually, to be honest with you, I took on a whole lot more than personally I thought I was capable of. And I think fear is a big thing. We get into our comfort zones. So as leaders, how do we show people that we know that they have potential and they could take on more responsibility? How do we transfer that to somebody else to say, "Hey, I think you're ready"? Let me read some of these comments while you all think about that. I got Angel. Angel, we must ask, what can I do to improve? How can I help improve my team? Not in a blame sense. Elliot, you can lead, but people also have to be willing to be led. I read that already. I'm sorry. Coming alongside people, encouraging and building people up is the best way. Hold accountable, but build up and encourage. That's powerful, Elliot. That's great. Include them in the discussion. Yes, Scott. Include them into the discussion. Yeah, I mean, I guess, if you invite them in to the decision-making process, that might be a way that they might actually take ownership and responsibility. Let them be part of the process. Yeah, Elliot, I think. Oh, Scott, you had to bring up a bad one. All right, so inside joke. The last live video that I did, Elliot actually said what Scott just did right now in the chat. Elliot typed fail forward. And I thought he said fall forward. So I went on for about, at least 5 or 6 minutes about falling forward, only for Elliot to correct me later that he said fail forward. So I guess I got my good glasses on tonight, so I'm actually seeing that. And yes, absolutely right. Fail forward. Um, yeah, that was kind of interesting. So let's go working through this slide. What should happen when you find out that someone you delegated responsibility to is not able to handle it? Um, so that's interesting. So you see potential in someone, and you want them to take on more responsibility, and you delegate more responsibility to them, and then you find out that they can't handle it. How do we approach that? How do we approach that as a leadership team? I find that really interesting. I think about, here you have all this responsibility. Now I'm going to take it all away. I mean, if we take it away too quickly, do we scar the individual as being a failure? How do we approach that where I gave you too much, I have to take some back? It's a very good question. You're not ready for that yet. Um, and yes, we have to realize that as leaders that we might delegate too much to someone and not realize that that might be over their head, and we have to pull it back a couple of notches. How do we do that and still be encouraging at the same time? So, and Scott, okay, oftentimes they know this before we do, and you can unwrap the issue through conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I agree. We have to have a healthy conversation, but we have to also be encouraging at the same time. How do we be encouraging and say, you're not ready for this yet? Hmm. That's it's going to be a tough conversation, isn't it? I gave you responsibility. It's too much for you. How do we walk this back? Elliot, this is where you really need to know your people. Give small test. Okay. Encourage, train, support. It's very dynamic, but true leadership can see it through and can adapt and support. I agree. I agree. You have to, this is about building personal relationships with your employees. And again, I think that's a whole nother video. I think this is where leadership really fails is they stop building relationships with the people that are under them or next to them or even above them. You have to have that relationship. If you're not connected to the people you lead and the people that are leading you, I think that's where a lot of failure comes in. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not facilitating this conversation to say that I'm always right, but I think you hit something right there that it is all about having a relationship. And if you're not willing to understand the people that are with you, below you, and above you, I think that's where a lot of failures begin. And definitely correct me if I'm wrong. Scott, they just may need more training. It is a skill or will. Okay. Okay. I get that. Skill or will. Yeah. And it's funny. Leadership, taking on responsibility, moving up, that's all skill based. But it's also talent. And the reason why I bring up talent is it's something that has to be continuously practiced. I can give you all the knowledge in the world to be a leader, but you have to practice it continuously. For instance, I'm a musician. If I don't practice, I start to lose skill. I don't know if that makes sense. If there's anyone out there that's a musician, I think you'll understand that. You have to practice continuously, or else you lose skill. And the opposite is true. The more you practice, the more skill you gain. And I think that's a powerful statement, Scott. They need more training. It is a skill or will. So as you help people develop and have them practice responsibility, have them practice leadership, they develop skill and they propel forward. Um, we've heard you play. It makes sense. Yeah, I get you. I get you there. Yeah, I should practice more. Absolutely. Um, but yeah, so I think that's the thing is we have to encourage people around us to practice responsibilities. So moving on, what role does accountability play in leadership? There are three key elements that I'm going to touch on. I'm not saying these are all the elements, but I'm going to touch on three and then open it up to you folks. One is ownership, taking ownership as a leader, taking on responsibility and accountability. Now, those three all sound like they're the same, but they're not. Ownership is, and I know you probably all will agree. Just because you take ownership of something doesn't mean that you're responsible or taking accountability. Taking ownership is I look at it this way. It's kind of like on a spiritual level. This is my project. I'm taking ownership. And that leads to responsibility. I'm going to be responsible for everything that happens with this project. And accountability. That's kind of like the end result. So after you've taken ownership, you've taken responsibility, accountability is the end result of that project. And if you have those three key elements in check, you're pretty much on the pathway to leadership. You're pretty much there. If you understand those three key elements. So Elliot, before practicing leadership, the root is desire. You really have to desire to want to be a good leader. Skill only gets you so far. Desire takes you further. For me, desire comes from the heart. Absolutely. That's pretty powerful right there. It has to come from the heart. So you don't wake up one day and just say, hey, gonna be a leader tomorrow. No, it really it takes work. It takes joining a community like Pathway to Leadership. It takes searching out others that you're going to surround yourself with, whether it be personally, a physical relationship. And what I mean by that is, someone that you can actually sit down with face to face, or it's actually surrounding yourself with positive information, whether it be through social media, TED Talks, other places, that you can get information from. It's a dedication, and you have to have that dedication, and it is a desire. You will get the skills when you surround yourself and actually really do desire. Because if you're looking to go into leadership just to get a raise, you've already failed. If you're looking to get into leadership to make a bigger paycheck, you already failed. If you're looking to get into leadership just to have power over other people, you've already failed. So, and again, that's a video for another time, but I think it's relevant right now because we're talking about responsibility. We're talking about accountability. We're talking about taking ownership. And if those are the reasons why you're going after a leadership position is money, wealth, or power, you've already failed. That's not what it's about. It's actually sad if that's the reason why you're going for it. It also requires humbleness. A good leader will never see themselves as above others. A true leader is a servant leader, one who puts themselves below others to lift them up. That's awesome. That's an awesome statement. And if you really look at people that have been the most successful in leadership, they really do that. They put in the hard work to support others. The worst place on a house to be is a cornerstone or a stone in the foundation. And the reason why is because the weight of everything is upon you. The weight of everything is upon you. But everybody lives above you. Everybody enjoys themselves above you. Everybody celebrates above you, has a nice life above you. There's a whole lot going on above you, and you are the foundation to which that happens. Although the crushing weight of the house is always on the cornerstone and the foundation, it is one of the most majestic places to be when you really think about. And I need to digress. I mean, that was really cool that you brought that up because it really does put into perspective that without that foundation, none of the rest of it can happen. None of the rest of it can be sustained. So as leaders, we have to think of ourselves as cornerstones and blocks in the foundation so that the rest can achieve and have just a wonderful life. Doesn't mean that we can't have a wonderful life too, but it does mean that we are the foundation for the rest to happen. Scott says here, surrounding yourself with others is vital. Leadership can be a very lonely place. Yes, it can. And going back to the house, it can be very lonely at the bottom, supporting everything. I do agree it is very lonely, trust me, but I know it's for a greater purpose, as I'm sure you do as well. Yes, it is a greater purpose. What's our legacy? What are we leaving behind? Excuse me. Had pizza for supper. What are we leaving behind? Okay. What are you leaving behind every day when you walk away from the workplace, when you walk away from anywhere that you've been? What is left behind? Think about that. For me, it doesn't matter if I'm remembered forever, but it would be nice to know that I helped someone propel themselves further. I was inspiration to someone. I was somebody's one of 5 that they surrounded themselves with. To me, that's leadership. To me, that's legacy. Sorry, I'm trying to read these as they're popping through. Surrounding yourself with others is vital. Leadership can be very lonely. Yes. The inverted leadership triangle. Okay, I'm not familiar with that. Just gonna admit that the inverted leadership triangle. Um, Scott, maybe after this video we can get together and you can teach me, teach me a little bit about the inverted leadership triangle. I find that very interesting. So, so we have ownership, responsibility, and accountability. Are there some other key elements that we should put together with that? Other key elements of effective leadership. Elliot, you brought up humility. I'm sure that's definitely one of those key elements. Okay, let's move on. So I'm going to give a final thought and we'll open it up to final discussion. So my final thought on this is true leadership is looking at the problems, coming up with the solutions, and doing it blamelessly. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. The fact of the matter is there's an issue, it needs to be solved, and everyone needs to keep moving forward. Leaders create loyalty when they take ownership, they take responsibility, and they become accountable for everything around them. And I'm going to leave that for the final few minutes on this discussion. And I think it all barrels down to there's not just responsibility, it's ownership, responsibility, and accountability. Those are the three key elements that really define a leader. Okay, so Elliot just schooled me in the inverted triangle. Think of it as an organizational chart, but upside down. Okay. All right. I'm just going to say I'm going to need some help with that, but I gotcha. So, any final thoughts from anyone that's in the chat? We're going to be going offline here in about 30 minutes. I mean, not 30 minutes, 30 seconds. So, last thoughts? All right. Well, I really thank you for joining us at Pathway to Leadership. I hope that you'll subscribe and you'll hit the like button. We're going to be doing this every Tuesday night. I'm asking those that are watching to please send me an email. I'll put it in the description after the live is up on the regular video. If you want to be part of the live panel, please shoot me an email and we'll coordinate that. And every week we're going to be meeting and discussing leadership things. So thank you for being part of the community. We will see you next time on Pathway to Leadership.